In the previous lesson, we introduced just the basics of compounding. Now, in this lesson, I just want to go over how to determine these terms that we had. So we saw that we had the principal and then the interest was being compounded and added together over time. But what are these terms and how do we determine them? So a term was a certain amount of time that we have. And I will show you the different types of terms and different time periods, at least some of the most common ones that you have. Some are more common than the others. We will go over in determining how many terms do you have in a year, and then finally, how many terms do you have in total? Because we don't just always invest 1 year. We invest basically an arbitrary amount of time. So if you think about terms, I've created this little chart here, and the most common term periods are the following. So 1 year that you see right here is typically known just simply as annually, meaning that if we would be compounding, it would be on an annual basis. So just once per year, meaning that we would take the interest and then add it to the principal at the end of the year. But you don't have to do that. You can actually compound sooner. So for instance, if you say semi-annually, which is the second one, that means you're going to be adding the interest at the end of 6 months. So semi-annually means it's twice a year, and if it is twice a year, that gives us a 6-month stretch of time. And after that 6 months, we add our interest, and then that's when the compounding happens. And then it gets into quarterly. Quarterly is basically just 3 months. It is a quarter of a year. And that would mean that we would be compounding 4 times within that particular year, because it would happen at the end of the 3 months, would happen at the end of 6 months, 9 months, and then at the end of the year. Now you can say bi-monthly, monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, weekly, daily. So you can basically compound any time that you like. And that is an argument, that you can have, or an arrangement that you can have, I apologize, with either the bank maybe that you're loaning from, or maybe you're just doing investing or something like that. So these are common ones. Now again, as I said, some are much more common than the others, like compounding annually or semi-annually, quarterly, okay, monthly. You might see a little bit more than some of the other periods. Now, on the right-hand side, so I've already mentioned that these are the amount of compounding periods per year. So what you see right here is important to us because we want to know how many times we will compound in a year. And this, okay, so is typically referred just to as a little m. It doesn't have to be because it depends who is teaching this. I will refer it to as just a little m for shorthand, and what it means is how many times do you compound per year? So the number of times in 1 year. So annually, of course, it's only once per year. Semi-annually would be twice per year. Quarterly would be 4 times per year, and so on. Now, daily, even if it is a leap year, you still only compound 365 times. Okay, so that's what we would have. Now, this particular chart allows us now to find out, well, if I know how often I am compounding in a year, then, well, what happens if someone gives me an arbitrary amount of time? So for instance, if they tell us that you have invested or borrowed for 80 months, what we're interested in is, okay, well, if I am using quarterly as my gauge, now you may remember from the chart above, quarterly means it is 4 times in a year. Now, what we would like to do is we would like to find out, okay, what is the total amount of terms that we would invest for or borrow for? And that simply is just the number of years that you are borrowing or investing for, and it is multiplied by the number of terms that you have in a year. So 80 months, as you know, you can convert to years by simply saying 80 over 12. And that would mean that if you wanted to find out n, you just simply multiplied by 4. And you can get your answer. Now you can use your calculator. I like to always keep them just as a fraction, okay, if possibly I can, because if you punch it into the calculator, sometimes you'll have decimals, and in that case, you always wonder, how many decimals should I keep? Well, you should keep as many as possible, okay, or the better way is just to simply leave this as a fraction. So if you multiply this, as a fraction, okay, this would just simply be 80 over 3, and I would just keep it like that. And that's my n, which would be the total number of terms that I have invested or borrowed for. Now, what if I was compounding monthly? So the second example there. Well, if I was compounding monthly, so in this particular case, if I wanted to find my n, so n is equal to, so again, remember it is the number of years. So in this case, they give us the number of years, which is 4.5, multiplied by m, which is the number of terms in a year. Well, monthly means 12, and that is just simply coming from there. Okay, so notice right there. So 4.5 times 12, and we can get our n. And in this case, okay, so if I do that, so 4.5 times 12, so in this case it gives us a nice number, which is 54. So that would mean that this investment or borrowed amount basically had 54 terms that were compounded on a monthly basis. Now the last example that you see there, 70 weeks semi-annually. So in that one, so for 70 weeks, so remember I have to always turn this back into years. Well, if I want to know how many years this is, I can simply take the 70 weeks and divide by 52, because there are 52 weeks in a year. So this gives me the number of years, which is just a little bit over a year. And then all I would do is multiply by m, and because in this situation it is semi-annually, now semi-annually is 2 times per year, so all I would do is just multiply this by 2. Okay, and if I do that, now in this case again, so I'll try to keep it as a fraction, and you can double check this. So that would be 70. Now I know actually that 2 goes into 52 26 times. Now I can reduce this, but it doesn't matter as much in this particular case. Okay, so if I reduce it by 2, okay, I will just get that. And I actually like to just keep it as a fraction, okay, unless it nicely works out like we'd had in the previous example. Again, because then I don't worry about how many decimals I should keep. Okay, so I'll just keep all of them. So just to recap, the number of terms that we are interested in is always related to how you are compounding. And now you can compound in various amounts that you saw right here. And that always gives us the total number of compounding periods per year. Once we have that, then we can use our formula right there to obtain the total number of compounding periods or terms. And these terms, that's what we were referring to right here. So term 1 could be maybe 1 month. It could be maybe 3 months if it's quarterly. It could be 1 year. And then at the end of that term, we simply add the interest, okay, on top of the principal, and then we start off again. All right, so that was an introduction to the number of terms. Thank you for watching.